The storm had passed, but the sky still wore the bruises of night. Thunderclouds drifted above the pine trees, their bellies pale with dawn. Mist clung to the ground in soft ribbons. Elise Harding walked carefully through the undergrowth, her boots sinking into the wet moss. The wicker basket over her arm bounced lightly with each step, half filled with wild mint, yarrow, and slippery elm bark. The forest was quiet, unnaturally so. The birds hadn't started singing yet. The only sound was the whisper of dripping leaves and her own breathing. She crouched beside a fern, reaching for a patch of chickweed when she heard it. A low groan. She froze. It hadn't been the wind. It was a human sound, painful, distant. Elise stood up slowly, holding her breath. "Hello?" she called, her voice swallowed by the trees. No answer. She turned in a slow circle, trying to trace the direction. Then another groan, closer, to the east. Dropping her basket, Elise pushed through the brush. Twigs snapped beneath her feet. Brambles caught her skirt. The sound led her down a slope toward a thick stand of fir trees. There, beside a rotting log, lay a man. He was collapsed awkwardly on his side, his hat tipped forward, hiding most of his face. His shirt was torn, dark with blood around the ribs and left thigh. One leg was twisted in a way that made her stomach tighten. "Sir?" she said, dropping to her knees. No response. She touched his shoulder lightly. His eyelids fluttered. Beneath the grime and sweat, his face was gaunt and sharp. His jaw was covered in stubble, and his lips were cracked. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked again. This time his eyes opened, pale blue, startling against the filth. He focused on her slowly, blinking. Don't call the sheriff," he rasped. His voice was low and rough, but there was urgency behind it. "I wasn't going to," she began. "Please." His hand shot up weakly, grabbing her wrist. "No one. Just help me. Don't call anyone." She looked him over again, the wounds, the bruises, the pain in his eyes. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like someone barely holding on to life. "All right," she said, "but I need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" He shook his head slowly, eyes closing again. She took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll get you to my cabin." It took everything she had. She fetched Clementine, her sturdy brown mare, and built a makeshift stretcher from fallen branches and an old tarp. Getting the stranger onto it without worsening his injuries was a test of nerves and strength. All the while, he drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling things she didn't understand, names, numbers, occasional pleas in his fevered dreams. The trip back to the cabin was slow. She kept whispering, "Hold on, just a little longer," even though she wasn't sure he heard her. At last, as dusk began to creep in, the outline of her little log cabin appeared between the trees. Inside, she cleared the daybed and laid him down. Her hands moved with automatic purpose, fetching clean water, tearing linen strips, boiling herbs. She cleaned the deep gash on his side, stitched it with trembling fingers, and wrapped it tight. His leg was worse, broken, definitely. She splinted it as best she could. Fever set in quickly, and he thrashed in his sleep, murmuring names. She wiped his forehead with a damp cloth. "You're not dying today, cowboy. Not in my house." 3. Days passed. He barely woke. Elise fed him small sips of broth, changed his bandages, and talked to him about anything and everything, just to keep the silence from becoming too heavy. On the 4th morning, she heard him stir. She turned from the stove, heart racing. He was awake, propped up slightly on one elbow, squinting at the room. "Where am I?" "In my cabin," she said, coming closer. "You were in the woods, badly hurt." He grimaced and shifted. "You dragged me out?" with a horse and a lot of stubbornness. He looked around again. The place was simple. Wood walls, shelves of dried herbs, a fireplace, and a single window that looked out to the trees. "You should have left me," he muttered. "I don't make a habit of leaving strangers to die." He gave a weak smile. "Then you're one of the rare ones." She sat across from him. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Jack. Just Jack." Time passed differently in the cabin. Days drifted by, stitched together by shared silences and soft conversation. Jack healed slowly. He was quiet but curious. He asked about the plants she grew, the way she made poultices. She noticed things about him, how his hands, though calloused, looked like they hadn't done manual labor in years. How he flinched, slightly at certain sounds, like he was used to constant noise. One night, they sat by the fire. Elise was sipping tea, and Jack stared into the flames. "You live out here alone?" She nodded. "Been that way since Grandma passed. I like it this way." "No family?" "Not anymore, and I prefer the company of birds to people most." "Days?" Jack nodded slowly. "You ever think of leaving?" She shrugged. "I left once. Cities aren't for me. Too fast, too fake, too loud." He looked over at her, something unreadable in his gaze. "Yeah, it lies to you." One morning, while Elise was feeding Clementine, a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop at the end of her path. She hadn't heard it until the engine shut off. A tall man in a black suit stepped out. He wore sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. "Good." "Morning, ma'am," he said. "I'm looking for someone. Might have passed through here." She stood still, hands covered in hay. "Depends who you're looking for." "Man, mid-30s, about 6 feet, dark hair, possibly injured." He flashed a badge. "Private security. Jack Beckett's been missing for nearly a month." She blinked. "Jack who?" "Jack Beckett, CEO of Beckett Holdings, billionaire. He was last seen riding alone on one of his ranches. We believe he was ambushed." Elise's mouth went dry. "He's a billionaire?" "Yes, ma'am. And his family is very concerned." She forced herself to stay calm. "Haven't seen anyone strange. Good luck." The man eyed her, nodded, and got back into the SUV. She stood in the clearing long after he'd gone. When she returned to the cabin, Jack was sitting up, already watching her. "You knew?" she asked. He didn't look away. "I figured it'd catch up eventually." "You're not just Jack." He shook his head. "No, Jack Beckett." She folded her arms. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to be him around you. I wanted to be human, not a company, not a headline." She didn't know what to say. "I wasn't hiding to trick you," he said. Being out there, being him, it was killing. Me. I needed to disappear. Then the accident happened. Then you found me. You said not to call the sheriff. Because if they found me then, I'd be pulled back into everything before I could breathe again." She looked at him, this man she had nursed, trusted even, if she admitted it, grown to care for. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. "I've arranged a flight, tomorrow morning. I want you to come with me." "To where?" "To my world, just for a while. I want to show you what I've built. I want you to see that it doesn't have to be fake or fast. Not if we shape it together." She shook her head. "Jack, I'm not someone who belongs in mansions or boardrooms. Neither am I, not anymore, not without you." The next morning she packed nothing. Jack was waiting by the door, eyes full of hope. They didn't speak much on the way to the helicopter, but when it lifted off and the trees grew small beneath them, she reached for his hand. He held it. "Horte." 6 months later, the city didn't feel so loud anymore. Elise had a rooftop garden, a quiet room to write, and a man who looked at her like she'd saved him. Because she had. And sometimes, When the noise became too much again, they went back to the cabin, no headlines, no money, just them, Jack and Elise.